It was a busy night at the restaurant where Jose worked as a janitor. He was almost done with his shift when his boss told him that he still needed to do one last check outside and make sure everything was clean. With his trusty trash bag in hand, he went out the back door and, as he walked to the dumpster, something caught his attention. Near a tree, half hidden by the shade, stood a young woman, her face resting on her hands and her shoulders shaking slightly. Jose, always attentive and kind-hearted, noticed that she seemed to be crying. He stopped for a moment, not sure what to do, but something inside him pushed him to go to her. "Miss, are you okay?" he asked in a soft voice, trying not to scare her. The young woman looked up slowly, revealing a face marked by tiredness and sadness. She seemed surprised that someone had noticed her presence, but also grateful that someone had bothered to ask. Jose could see that she was clearly dejected, her clothes worn and her gaze lost. "No, I don't know if I'm okay," she replied with a sigh. "I'm hungry, I don't have a place to stay, and I don't know what to do anymore." Jose felt a pang of compassion. He knew what life was like and how hard it was to survive, because he had also gone through days when things seemed impossible. Trying not to seem too intrusive, he said with a welcoming smile, "Look, I don't have much, but I can get you something to eat inside. Come with me." She hesitated for a moment, looking confused, but Jose's sincere smile seemed to offer a bit of hope. After all, someone had cared about her. The young woman nodded shyly and got up slowly, following Jose to the back door. When they entered the restaurant, Jose asked her to stay there while he went to see what he could do. He had to be quick, without anyone noticing her presence. He knew the owner of the restaurant was a fair man, but he was also strict, and Jose didn't want to put his job at risk. He looked back, seeing the young woman standing there, and felt that somehow that meeting had happened for a reason. Jose went to the kitchen, trying to act natural. He glanced around, making sure no one would see him taking some leftover bread and some hot soup, still fresh. He knew it wasn't much, but it would be enough to ease the young woman's hunger. He put everything on a tray and returned to where she was, motioning for her to sit at a small table in the corner, away from the cameras and the crowd. She accepted the tray with a look of surprise and gratitude. Her eyes, which had previously seemed full of tears, now shone a little brighter. Jose watched as she began to eat slowly, as if each bite was precious. Silence fell for a moment until he finally asked in a calm voice, "So, how did you end up here? You seem to be going through a lot." The young woman took a deep breath and put the bread aside, seeming to gather the strength to answer. "My name is Clara," she said softly, as if she was afraid someone else might hear. "Things got complicated in my life. I lost everything. My family, my friends, even the man I thought would stay by my side." She paused for a moment, trying to hold back the tears that insisted on welling up. Jose just watched her, respecting her moment. Finally, she continued, her voice breaking. "I found out I was pregnant a few months ago. At first, I thought it would be something beautiful, but when I told my boyfriend, he abandoned me. It wasn't long before my family turned their backs on me too. They said they didn't want to take care of anyone else, that they already had enough problems." Jose felt his chest tighten when he heard that. He knew how cruel and unfair life could be, especially for those who are alone. "It's so hard to go through this alone," he said softly. "But you're strong, Clara. I can see that, despite everything, you're here, trying to move on." Clara gave a small smile, unable to hide the sadness in her eyes. "I don't know if I'm strong, Jose. Sometimes it just feels like I'm surviving. I don't even know how I got here. But thank you for helping me. Just hearing someone care gives me a little more strength." Jose nodded, feeling more and more connected to this stranger who, in just a few minutes, already felt like an old friend. He knew he didn't have much to offer, but he felt like he needed to do something more for her. "You're going to be okay, Clara," he said, with a touch of hope in his voice. And, even without understanding why, Jose felt like this meeting was just the beginning of something bigger. After hearing Clara's story, Jose realized he couldn't let her leave without anything else. Something in him was driving him to help her more than he could. That moment, he looked around, making sure no one was watching, and leaned toward Clara. "Look, Clara, I don't have much, but if you need it, I can see if I can find you a place to rest for a while, Jose said, his voice sincere. Clara, surprised by his generosity, looked at him as if she had trouble believing it. Jose, you've already done so much for me. I don't want to give you any more work or cause you any problems, she replied, almost apologetically. Jose smiled reassuringly. Hey, it's not any work. Everyone needs a helping hand sometimes, right? And honestly, I just want you to be okay. It's hard for everyone, but I know what it's like to have to face everything alone. You can rest a little and think about what to do from now on. Clara, with tears in her eyes, nodded in agreement. I don't know how to thank you, Jose. No one has been this kind to me in a long time. I feel like everything has been turned upside down since I found out I was pregnant. But you, without even knowing me, decided to help me. Jose felt the weight of her words. He knew that Clara was going through something that many people wouldn't be able to handle, especially alone. That's it, let's go. I'll take you to a place where you can rest. Then we'll figure out what to do, okay? With her head still slightly lowered, Clara smiled shyly, clearly touched by Jose's unexpected kindness. He stood up and helped her pick up the few things she was carrying with her. Trying to avoid any suspicion, he led her to the back exit, the path he always took to avoid the restaurant's crowds. As they walked, he tried to lighten the mood with light conversation, telling them about how he started working at the restaurant, the difficulties he faced, and the dreams he still held in his heart. Clara listened attentively, feeling that this was the first moment of peace and hope in a long time. Even though the future was still uncertain, for the first time in months, she felt that there was a small light at the end of the tunnel. When they arrived at a simple boarding house where Jose lived, he arranged for Clara to stay in a room next to his. He found some money with the little he had saved and paid her the daily rate, ensuring that she would have a peaceful night's sleep and some privacy to think about her next steps. Before leaving her, Jose looked Clara in the eyes and said, "We'll figure out what to do tomorrow, okay? Today, just rest." With a last look of gratitude, Clara closed the door, leaving Jose with the feeling that, in some way, this meeting would change both of their lives. The next morning, Jose returned to the restaurant earlier than usual. He had slept little, anxious, and at the same time worried about Clara's situation. He was already thinking about how he could help her in the long run. But when he entered the restaurant, he noticed that Mr. Luis, the owner, was calling him with a serious gesture. "Jose, come to my office. We need to talk," Mr. Luis said, with a tone that mixed seriousness and curiosity. Jose felt his stomach turn. Had anyone seen him and Clara the night before? He took a deep breath and walked to the office, bracing himself for whatever was to come. When he entered, he closed the door and remained silent, waiting for his boss to speak. "Jose, I watched the security cameras yesterday. I saw that you brought someone to the restaurant and offered them food without telling me," Mr. Weiss began, with a tone of slight reproach. "You know I try to keep things organized around here. And even though I am fair, I need to maintain order." Jose lowered his head, his heart racing. "I am so sorry, Mr. Weiss. It was a spur-of-the-moment decision. This girl, she really needed help. She is pregnant, alone, and starving. I didn't know what to do. I just thought it would be the right thing to do." Mr. Luis watched him in silence for a few moments, as if pondering Jose's words. "I understand your concern, Jose, and you did something brave and humane. But when I saw that girl on the cameras, something about her caught my attention." Jose looked at his boss with a slight sign of confusion. "Did something catch your attention? What do you mean?" Mr. Luis paused before continuing. "I had a daughter many years ago. She was little when everything changed. My ex-partner moved away and took the girl with her. I never heard from them again. And somehow, this girl you brought yesterday reminded me of her." Jose was speechless. He had never heard Mr. Luis talk about his personal life, much less about a daughter he had lost contact with. I'm sorry, Mr. Luis. I didn't know you had gone through this." The boss sighed, seeming to struggle with old, painful memories. "You don't have to apologize. Just, if you could, I'd like to talk to this girl, Clara. Maybe it's nothing, but I'll tell you. But Something inside me tells me that I need to know more about her. Jose nodded, feeling a mix of surprise and relief. Of course, Mr. Luis. She's staying at a guest house nearby. I can talk to her and ask her to come to the restaurant. Maybe she'd like to talk to you too. Mr. Luis nodded, with a look that mixed hope and apprehension. Do it, Jose. And thank you for trusting me. With a final wave, he released Jose, who left the office determined to help Clara in this new, unexpected chapter of her life. After leaving Mr. Luis's office, Jose went straight to the guest house where he had left Clara. He quickly went upstairs and knocked lightly on her bedroom door, hoping that she was awake. In a few seconds, Clara opened the door, her face still a little marked by fatigue, but visibly calmer. Jose, I'm so glad you came. I was thinking about how I could thank you for everything you did for me yesterday, Clara said, with a shy smile. Jose smiled back and took a deep breath before explaining the reason for his visit. Clara, I need to tell you something. Yesterday, while I was at the restaurant, Mr. Luis, my boss, called me to his office. He saw you on the security cameras and asked me to take you there. Clara's face went a little pale. Was he mad? I didn't want to cause you any trouble, Jose. No, it's not that, Jose replied quickly, trying to reassure her. Actually, he wants to meet you because seeing you on the cameras touched something in him. He told me that he had a daughter many years ago, but he lost contact with her. And somehow, he feels like he needs to meet you. Clara fell silent, absorbing Jose's words. She seemed surprised, and at the same time, a spark of hope lit up her eyes. That's very strange, she murmured. I never knew my father. My mother always avoided talking about him. And I grew up believing that he didn't care. Jose nodded, realizing that there might be a connection they hadn't even imagined. Clara, I know this seems like a crazy coincidence, but maybe this is the opportunity for you to finally find some answers. Mr. Luis is a fair man, and he seemed really touched when he talked about you. Clara took a deep breath, and with an unexpected determination in her voice, she said, I think I should go. Maybe I'll find something I've been looking for years. Jose followed her back to the restaurant, each of them deep in thought. When they arrived, Mr. Luis was waiting in the office, and when he saw Clara enter, he was visibly moved. His eyes filled with tears, but he did his best to maintain his composure. Clara, that's it, isn't it? He asked, his voice breaking. Your name, your appearance. There's something about you that seems familiar. I know this is a lot to take in, but please allow me to ask you a few questions. Clara, still surprised and nervous, nodded, and the two began to talk. Memories slowly surfaced, and each answer she gave seemed to fill a gap in Luis's past. He discovered that she had actually been born in the same city where he had lost contact with her mother. Each detail that emerged seemed to increase the possibility that Clara was, in fact, the daughter he believed he had lost forever. Between emotions and revelations, the two began to realize that destiny could be reuniting a family that had been separated for a long time. Jose watched everything in silence, feeling that he had been a fundamental part of this unexpected reunion. With her heart racing and her emotions on edge, Clara listened attentively to every word Mr. Luis said. He spoke with a mixture of joy and pain, recalling the past that, until that moment, seemed like just a story lost in his memories. As the details emerged, the feeling that Clara was really his daughter grew stronger. Years ago, I had a very intense relationship, but things got complicated, Luis explained, his voice oscillating between firmness and regret. Your mother decided to leave without giving me the chance to know what our future would be like. She took you with her when you were still a baby. I tried to find you, but all the clues disappeared, and I thought I would never see you again. Clara listened in silence, trying to process the words that seemed to answer so many questions that had plagued her since childhood. It was strange, but at the same time, it all made sense. She had always felt the absence of a father and had always wondered why she had never known anything about him. Now, suddenly, fate seemed to place the answers before her. My mother, she never told me much about you, Clara said in a small voice. She always avoided the subject. She just said I didn't need to worry about it. I grew up believing that I didn't have a father, that he would never come back to me. Mattered. Weiss lowered his head, clearly moved. I never stopped looking for you, Clara. I always hoped, in some corner of my mind, that one day this would happen. But at the same time, time passed, and hope began to fade. Tears began to stream down Clara's face, and she could not contain her emotion. It was as if a part of her, which had always been empty, was now being filled with the truths she had always longed to hear. Jose, who had been watching from the side, was moved to see that encounter full of revelations. He knew he had done the right thing by helping Clara that night, and now, witnessing this connection between them, he felt grateful for having followed his heart. Finally, after a few moments of silence, Weiss raised his eyes and looked at Clara with a gleam of hope. Clara, I know it's a lot to take in, and I don't want to pressure you, but I would like you to give me a chance to be part of your life. Maybe we can start from here now. Clara looked at him, still trying to absorb everything, but a part of her felt ready to accept this new reality. I think it's all I've ever wanted, even without knowing it, she replied, her voice breaking. If you're willing to do it, then yes, I want to try. Weiss smiled emotionally and, for the first time in years, felt that the void in his heart was finally being filled. He extended his hand to Clara, and she took it, sealing a new beginning for both of them. Meanwhile, Jose, excited and happy to see the reunion, knew that his life would never be the same again. Fate had brought them together, and he felt blessed to have been the link that made this union possible. After that emotional conversation, Weiss and Clara decided that they needed time to assimilate everything they had discovered. They felt the need to build, little by little, a relationship based on trust and affection, something that life had not allowed them before. With that in mind, Louise suggested a more relaxed meeting at a nearby park, where they could talk without the formality of the office. The next day, under a clear, sunny sky, Clara arrived at the park, feeling a little nervous, but eager to continue getting to know the father she had believed to be absent until recently. Luis was waiting for her on a bench under the shade of a tree, and when he saw her approaching, his face lit up. He felt a rush of emotion as he realized how much Clara really resembled him. It was like looking at a part of himself that he had lost for so many years. She sat down next to him, and they exchanged a shy smile. "Thank you for inviting me, mister." Clara paused, not knowing exactly what to call him. "Please, you can call me Dad if you feel comfortable with that," Louise said, with a mixture of excitement and hope. Clara smiled, still getting used to the idea. "Dad, it feels so strange, but at the same time so right." They talked for hours, talking about their lives, their dreams, and everything they had experienced up until that point. Weiss told stories about his youth, about how he had always dreamed of having a family, and Clara opened her heart, sharing the difficulties she had faced and the loneliness she had felt growing up without a father figure. While the conversation was flowing, Jose arrived at the park, watching them from afar. He had arranged to meet Clara after meeting Weiss, to make sure everything was okay. Seeing the smile on her face and the ease with which she spoke to her father, he felt relieved and grateful to have been part of that reunion. Suddenly, Clara noticed Jose in the distance and waved for him to come closer. Weiss greeted him warmly, with a firm handshake and a look of gratitude. "Jose, I don't know how to thank you. If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened." Jose smiled, trying to downplay the compliment. "I just followed my heart, Mr. Weiss. I think that, deep down, my destiny was already written." The trio spent the rest of the afternoon together, sharing stories and laughter, almost like a family gathered in a moment of peace. Weiss, who had always been a reserved man, now felt like he was finding something deeper. Clara, in turn, saw in that man a figure she had always wanted in her life. As the afternoon began to draw in and the sun set, Clara felt an indescribable emotion overcome her. She held Luis and Jose's hands, feeling a wave of gratitude and love that she had never imagined possible. And there, under the orange and pink sky, she felt that, finally, a new phase of her life was just beginning. After that day in the park, Luis decided that he wanted to give Clara the support she had never had. He proposed that she move into one of the spare rooms in his house, offering her a safe place where she could rest and start over. Clara, touched by Luis's kindness and sincere desire to make up for lost time, accepted the invitation, feeling that that was the beginning of a new phase in her life. As soon as she settled in, Clara began to enjoy small moments of joy that she had not experienced for a long time. Luis's house, which before seemed like just a large, empty space, now came alive with Clara's presence. He treated her with affection and attention, always trying to make her comfortable, and took every opportunity to get to know her better. Jose continued to be a part of these moments. He visited Clara often, and soon they became even closer, sharing confidences and dreams for the future. The friendship that was born on that difficult night was transforming into something deeper, and they both began to realize that perhaps there was something special between them. One day, while they were having tea in the backyard, Luis approached Clara with a serious and, at the same time, hopeful expression. "Clara, I know things have changed quickly for you, but I wanted you to know that I am here to support you in everything, especially now with the baby on the way." Clara smiled, touched by his concern. "Dad, this means a lot to me. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm not alone." Luis smiled in relief, finally feeling like he was part of her life. "I want you to know that this house is yours too. And as for the baby, he'll have everything he needs." The days passed, and Clara felt more and more secure. The peace she had found with her father and Jose's faithful friendship helped her regain the strength she thought she had lost. Luis offered support in every way, encouraging her to study, to find a purpose, and to plan for the future with hope. For the first time, she felt surrounded by love and security, and this transformed every small task into a moment of happiness. But despite her father's support, Clara realized that she couldn't imagine a future without Jose. He had been by her side during the most difficult times, and over time, her heart grew fond of him. Jose, in turn, had also grown deeply attached to Clara and the baby she was expecting. One day, no longer able to hide his feelings, he gathered courage and approached Clara with a determined look in his eyes. "Clara, since you came into my life, everything has changed. I know your journey has been hard, but I want to be by your side every step of the way. I want us to start a family together if that's what you want to." Clara, surprised, felt a wave of emotion. The feelings she had kept in her heart finally found a voice. She held Jose's hand, with tears in her eyes, and said, "I wanted to, Jose. You were my angel when I was lost. I can't imagine this new phase without you by my side." With a tight hug, they sealed the beginning of a new chapter, now as companions ready to face life together. And, as he watched the scene, Luis smiled with a calm heart, knowing that his daughter was surrounded by love and had finally found the place where she belonged. After the declaration of love between Clara and Jose, their routine took a new direction. Now, united as a couple, they began to build, together, a welcoming home, full of dreams and plans for the future. Luis, happy and proud to see his daughter finally surrounded by love, offered his support in everything they needed, participating in the preparations for the arrival of their soon-to-be-born grandson. Little by little, Clara and Jose began to adjust their lives to the rhythm of the new family they were forming. Jose proved to be a devoted companion, caring for her with all the attention and affection. Even after long hours of work, he always found time to prepare something special for Clara, whether it was a home-cooked meal, a quiet conversation in the evening, or even a storybook, which he said was for the baby. Clara, in turn, was radiant. The anxiety of the first months of pregnancy was replaced by a peace she had never felt before. Surrounded by Jose's affection and the loving presence of her father, she prepared for motherhood with confidence. Luis, who was already a generous man, seemed to be reborn with the arrival of his granddaughter. He helped Clara and Jose prepare the baby's room, choosing every detail with care, and, whenever he could, he would give his daughter something he himself made a point of buying. One night, as they talked about the future, Jose looked at Clara with a sparkle in his eyes and said, "Clara, you know that this baby will be like my own son. I want to be the father he never had. And I want him to know that I am here for you, now and forever." Clara, overcome with emotion, held Jose's hand and replied affectionately, "I know, Jose. And that is exactly what makes you so special. The baby already has a wonderful father, and I am so grateful for everything you mean to us." The love and complicity between them grew over time, and Luis's presence only strengthened this bond. For him, seeing Jose take care of his daughter and the grandson who was about to be born was like being given a second chance, an opportunity to be present at all times and to be the father and grandfather he had always wanted to be. In the weeks leading up to the birth, the little family dedicated themselves intensely to the preparations. Every day was marked by new discoveries, conversations about the future, and shared dreams. Jose and Clara made plans for what would be a life full of love and dedication, while Luis watched them, excited and grateful for having found each other. The joy that filled the house seemed to infect everyone around. Luis's neighbors and friends, who knew his story, were happy to see how he had found peace and happiness again with Clara and Jose. The wait for the baby was celebrated by everyone, and each day brought a new promise of love and renewal for this family that, although it had formed unexpectedly, was now united by indestructible bonds. The long-awaited day had finally arrived. Clara went into labor one peaceful morning, and Jose, by her side, helped her take deep breaths while holding her hand firmly. Luis, in turn, waited anxiously in the hospital, pacing back and forth, his heart racing. He felt blessed to have a new chance to be part of the lives of his daughter and the grandson he would soon meet. After a few hours of anticipation, a baby's cry echoed through the hallways, and Jose, with tears in his eyes, gave Clara a soft kiss on the forehead. "Our daughter has arrived, Clara. She's here, and she's perfect." Luis was called to meet his granddaughter, and when he entered the room, the smile on his face revealed all the emotion. Clara, exhausted and radiant, handed the little girl into her father's arms, who held her with all the delicacy, as if he were holding the greatest treasure in the world in his hands. He looked at his granddaughter and, upon seeing those small, curious eyes, knew that she was a gift, a blessing that life had given him. With the little girl in his arms, Luis made a silent promise. He would give her and Clara all the love and care he had kept in his heart for so many years. He would be the grandfather she could count on, the support Clara deserved, and the father that fate had allowed him to be again. Time passed, and that house, which had once been just an empty structure, was now a home filled with laughter, hugs, and moments of pure joy. Clara and Jose were married in a small ceremony, surrounded by friends and family, with Luis by their side, proud and excited to see his daughter begin a full and happy life. In his wedding speech, Luis stood up and, with a choked voice, declared, "Clara, you brought me back to life. Jose, you are the son I never had, and you are the miracle I never imagined I would witness. This family is a gift that I will keep and protect until the last of my days." The couple smiled and, looking at Luis, knew that this moment was the high point of their journeys, the culmination of a transformed life. Little Sophia, the name chosen by Clara to honor her mother, grew up surrounded by love and stories of overcoming. For her, her grandfather was a hero, her father was an example of generosity, and her mother was a source of strength and tenderness. Years later, Luis, now older, would sit in the backyard with his granddaughter, who was now a smart and curious child. She would ask to hear, once again, the story of how he and her mother met again. And with patience and affection, he would tell her, always ending with a piece of advice, "My dear, love always finds a way. Sometimes it comes from where we least expect it, and when we allow ourselves to believe, it transforms everything." And so, Clara, Jose, and Luis continued to live, united by the love that overcame time and circumstances, a family that fate brought together unexpectedly, but that became inseparable. Because, after all, as Luis used to say, True love is the one that finds the way, no matter how long or difficult the journey.